ESP32-C5 time for the second pass. A few days ago I showed you that the ESP32-C5 can be purchased, and now I'm going to show you how to set it up in ESP IDF and also how to populate a little development board. As you can see here, I did it pretty simple with the PCB. This is here inside of IDF, and you see in the middle there is the module, and around it there are these two connectors for connecting all kinds of DuPont header pins. And then the next thing which is important are these ALCO switches here for controlling the reset line and the boot line. And finally, as we look to the bottom, we see two MLCC capacitors and an extra set of pins for the power supply. And this is basically it. Here you see the PCB. It's mostly one huge ground plane. And yes, of course, if you want to do RF work, there are keep out areas which you should obey. But for this design here, I didn't bother with it because I only wanted to get it working with IDF. And next, we need a PCB. I've designed one, as you see here. This is the finished result. You can buy it from PCBWay. I got it uploaded there. Or you can just make your own version. It's really, as we discussed, not a challenging design at all. What we are doing here is we have to solder in this module. I know that many people like to use a reflow oven for this, but I do it by hand for a simple reason. Because these modules, as you see, they actually consist of a bunch of sub-modules. And I'm always worried reflowing these because, you know, we have a small reflow oven in the office here. And I'm a bit paranoid about reflowing expensive parts. So, what are we gonna do? We're gonna solder it in by hand. And this is the process. I know everybody is afraid of hand soldering these modules, but it actually isn't as bad as everybody tells you. The first step is that we tin one pad, like here, you see. We want to give it a good portion of tin, and then also a bit of hygrophobe colophonium, just to make sure that it will reflow well. And the next step is the most critical one, because we take the module and then we have to solder the module in, and we have to make sure that it's in parallel, because this is the one thing you cannot correct easily afterwards. And for this, I personally prefer to work without magnification or by looking outside of the microscope when the things become liquid. So you see here, we liquefy it. We have to wait for it to become very well liquid. And sometimes you see here the tin doesn't flow so well. Then we have a problem. And if this does happen to you, here of course a helper can be useful, but I don't have one in the lab now. Then you just put it like so. And you see this tin is crappy. So we need another type of tin, a new spool. Or we just heat it up and we make sure that the contacts line up like you see it here, and that they also line up on the other side, because then we can re-bridge all of the sides. And now the next step, of course, is that we go to the other side and we tin one of the pins on the other side as well to tack that down. Or rather, we can also go over here again. I mean, you see, it's all of a bit trickery. We can also go over here again, give it some more of the colophonium, and then just try to retin it once again. Quality. So, now we've got the first pin pinned, And now I remove the magnification and I go in like this. I liquefy this completely and then I check the alignment. And what's important here is that the module is aligned good enough that I can solder in the other contacts. This is all that you want to do at this first step. And the one in the back can be a little bad, because now that it's in position, we can solder in from the other side one by one. So, and now that it's somewhat well aligned, not perfectly, but good enough, we can correct the alignment a bit, as you see here, by just touching and reheating one more time. And then we want to solder in on the other side. Finalizing the actual connection we can do later. What's important is now that we get two good contacts, one on each side, so that the module is held in place in a reliable fashion. And here you see it's already soldered in on the other side as well. And then we can just go with a lot of colophonium, chuck, 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 one after the other. And yes, as you know, I have a problem with the nerve, so for me this soldering, it looks a bit funny, but you see, even I can do it. So in practice, this is something everybody should be able to do who's got some basic soldering experience. And yes, these are a bit too heavy, some of the contacts, but for an initial prototype, this doesn't really matter so much. Except for this one maybe, but I don't want to make too much of a problem here now. This here in the front is then where the power will come in, and I'm just gonna be using two more or less random capacitors, which I had laying around in the laboratory from Würth. And I'm just gonna solder this in normally, you know. Solder drop here, component on top with a pincer, solder the other side. And the same also for the resistors. And when this is done, switches and interface plugs, and then that's it. And you know, the old law applies, of course. First SMD, then THT. For the communication between the ESP32 board which we built and between the workstation, I like to use such an FTDI mini module here. You buy it once and you basically use it forever. So the next step is wiring it up. Ground to ground. Here you've got the connections between the USB to serial module and the programming UART. And then finally we need 3.3 volts. And yes, I know it is very charming to connect these two, but the problem is the power demand of the ESP32 can by far overpower the mini module, so I recommend to use an external power supply. And then finally, we need the buttons on pin 4 and pin 14. Pin 4 is used to cause the reset, and you need to hold pin 14 to tell the bootloader that data acquisition has to be done via these two pins here. And incidentally, what you are seeing here is basically the schematics of just about any Espressif dev board. And of course, sometimes instead of the FTDI, they use an IC from a different manufacturer. After connecting the FTDI mini module to the router, we run sudo dmask and we see a passage like this. And this informs us that we are ready to go. And in the next step, we go into a random ESP IDF installation. It can be any, even one which is intended for a completely different board. And we just set it up like you see here. This is an ADF installation. ADF is not really necessary. What is necessary is that we next switch into any random Espressif project. And the reason why we do this is because we want to enable the IDF PY tool to connect to the modem. And you see now here that we are getting this message, because this is a completely virginal ESP32 module, and so we get this invalid header warning, and sometimes we also get a sequence like this, which shows us that we're dealing with an ESP32-C5. And now the next step is we keep monitoring this, and now we hold the boot mode first, push and release the reset button, and then we get this message here, which tells us that we are now in theory ready to connect. And if you get this here, we get some kind of communication problem because my cable is a bit wonky. We are gonna ignore it for now. What's important is that you know how to get this message reliably. If we look into the technical documentation, we see that we need to use the master branch of ESP IDF, not a release. And because of this, the first thing I suggest is to create a new folder which will only hold the ESP master. As you see here, I've got a huge amount of different ESP32 folders with various different versions. And I can keep them apart because you simply set the environment variable to whatever you want to use. And then in the next step, we have to start the usual download process you see here. And this will take quite a bit of time because you see it's a very, very significantly nested repository. So GitHub, or rather Git, needs a bit of time to download it all. When this is done, we go here, ls, we see ESP IDF, we go into the ESP IDF subfolder, and we say git checkout master. And then after that, just to be sure, we still give git pull and we still give git submodule update. And now we have our ESP32 environment at the very most current level. The next thing we need to do is we need to run this command here. And you see, I'm targeting the C5 here, not the C3. And then you see here the whole downloading is starting, which will download all the utilities needed for the compilation process. And when we've got this, we enter this command here to arm the current version of ESP32. You see version 5.5 has been armed, and now we can go into any project here in the examples folder. We're going to get started. We go here, and now we need to enter this command here to start the provisioning for the C5. What is very important here is that the prototype chips will probably not be supported by the final release. So you should archive this one, because otherwise you might get problems. And at this point, you can basically deploy the program just like you would always do. So first we build, which always takes a bit of time. And then we put the board into download mode and we try to flash here. Sometimes it doesn't work. And then in the next step, we run this command here to flash, and we see it's now flashing the hello world. And after that, we say monitor. And then we push one last time the reset button. And here we see this is an ESP32-C5 with 1 core, silicon revision, blah blah blah. And here we have all the practical information which we can ever need about this ESP32-C5. And now you can basically just go bonkers and do whatever you want to. And with that, I wanted to thank you for your attention. See you soon. Bye bye.